40K is a game of miniatures fighting, and it's a lot more fun when those minis are paired with miniature scale scenery as well. Building a full board of terrain is quite the undertaking, but it's one that I have a lot of experience with, and with some help, I think I can get it done in record time. By the end of today, we'll have a full Warhammer 40,000 10th edition game board, or else Sean isn't allowed back at my house. We here at EonsOfBattle have finished the Fall buildings. This terrain is releasing on our website as of the month of December, and it takes advantage of the best aspects of 3D printing, making really detailed structures and decorations that are small and pairing them with all the recyclables in my house to bulk out the structure. The 3D printed parts feature half walls loaded up with sandbags and armored walls, doors, and lights, and there are eagle parapets that a model can stand on and look out over the battlefield from. There are parts for square buildings and rounded parts that are designed for Pringles cans. I've been eating a lot of Pringles in preparation for today. And it's not just buildings, there are also printed decorations and skins that we'll be wrapping the buildings in to add more texture and drama. And we made instructions for exactly how to build the shapes we're making today. It's been quite an undertaking between our artist Liqerise, our sculptor Radium Minis, Commander-in-Chief Nick, me, and now Sean is gonna help build it. So have you ever cut foam before?
No.
All right, it's pretty easy. I would say it's easier than cardboard, although it can't do quite as many things as cardboard, but it'll be a lot nicer than cardboard. So with these guys that I made before, they all correspond to different parts of the instruction, and so there's kind of two ways to do it. You can either take the measurement, use a ruler, and measure it out on the foam core, or this has all been printed to actual size, and so if you cut out this square, put it on here, and then cut it out, it will be the perfect size. So there's kind of two different ways to go about this. And you probably want to deal with one at a time. So this is all the parts for Barricade Bastion. While Sean was busy following the instructions, I started to cut out some parts for buildings out of my own brain. I know these parts need to follow a system of 2 inches wide sections and 2.5 inch high sections, so if I work within those parameters, I can build whatever I want. I'm thinking one big building that uses both foam and Pringles cans, and some extra small 4-inch bunkers would look lovely. It was fun having a builder buddy to help keep this project moving along in a nice clip. All right, so you wanna sticky those down to the foam and you wanna get them tiled. So you wanna get them like as close as you can to one another so that one cut can be 2 cuts. And then, yeah, let me know when you do that, and then I'll tell you about cutting foam, because it is kind of tricky. I just messed it up.
Okay.
The important thing with the foam is to keep the blade perfectly perpendicular to the paper. And then I find it helps to do like, you do one cut, and that gets you through the first layer of paper, and then you do another cut, that gets you through the foam, and then you do another cut, and that gets you through the other piece of paper. And you want to apply not too much pressure. See if I line this all up like this, I can zip through all 3 of these. Just paper, another zip to get through the foam, another zip to get through the last bit of paper.
Cut those sections out.
There should be 2 more pieces. All right, so this next part is probably the trickiest. We got all of these parts and they are all completely right, but when you put them together, they're gonna be wrong because they can't lay completely flush. And so there's a couple of different ways to deal with it. I did it the fancy architecture way, but there are other ways of doing it. But we gotta make it so that the top edges line up. What I'm calling the architecture corner is removing the foam and paper from one side to make a slot that the other piece of foam will fit into. I take one side of the foam and hold it up to the edge and trace a line. This gives me the exact height of how much foam I need to delete. Then I take my hobby knife and carefully cut through one side of the paper and then all of the foam, but not the other side of the paper. Then I flip the foam and cut along the side vertically, and this leaves me with the foam core paper hitting edge to edge. This keeps the foam core looking perfect. But another good way is just cutting it all off and letting it be a foam's width shorter. This is also how you have to do it if you're using cardboard instead of foam. You will see the foam edge, but it won't matter anyway, because later on we'll be hiding these crimes. Hot glue would probably be like what your go-to for doing something like this would be, but I actually like tacky glue. Have you ever used tacky glue?
Nope.
See, Elmer's, we all know Elmer's glue. It's the white sticky, vaguely sticky stuff. It tastes delicious, but this is about as sticky as like if you lick your fingers and then touch them. There's no real stick here. Tacky glue, I don't know what they do to the glue, because it seems like the same thing. It's just white glue, but tacky glue is actually glue. Like it'll actually hold, and it gives you just a little bit of wiggle. So that's the problem with hot glue is you put on the hot glue, you touch it together, it's wrong, it's already dry completely. So we're gonna use tacky. While Sean was working on putting together all the buildings, I put the final touches on my special buildings. The Pringles circles were a little tricky to cut, so I cheated and used my Dremel to get these half circles perfect. Last night, I was eating some Laughing Cow spreadable cheese wedges, and I thought this package would make for a fun addition to my building. This would be the spot the commissar gives speeches from. I marked out where on the first level this cheese lid sits, and then worked it into the floor plan. Then I built up the walls. I used cardboard because Sean was hogging all the foam. I measured the thickness of the cardboard and then cut this width off all the sides of the foam and glued it down. And for the Laughing Cow, I used the flat cardboard from a box of crackers to get the curve just right. The tacky glue is holding pretty good and it dries pretty quick, but one trick I found was wrapping the edges in painter's tape to help hold it while the glue finishes drying. With the square shapes all done, it was time to add in the Pringles cans. And I want models to be able to stand on top of these, so I cut some circles of foam core, lathered them up in glue, and then stuck them into the holes and they fit like a glove. So Sean, are you enjoying arts and crafts?
That's falling apart. This one stuck perfectly when I don't want it to be, and this other one is...
It knows, it can sense your fear. It's like a horse. 1.5 inches, pretty much on the dot. So this one's right. And this one's probably right because it was the same height.
It just needs a good cut.
It's going great. We finished building all of the shapes and we just got back from Culver's, got some double deluxes. I got bacon on mine.
I just got cheese.
You didn't get bacon?
No,
Why didn't you get bacon?
I wasn't in the mood for bacon today.
Does the bacon cost extra?
I think so.
Oh, well, I'm happy to pay for it. We still have a few more things to do before we start decorating, and that is to get them ready to be wallpapered. Have you ever installed wallpaper?
Not in a house or on any tiny boxes.
No, I've also never done it either. But we got to get these boxes ready, and so I think we airbrush the corners, so that way if we make any mistakes, it'll be a little bit less visible. The only spot where the foam might show through is in the corners, so we blasted these with primer. Airbrush primer. Rattle can primer tends to melt foam. And one thing we learned a little later on to get the paper to glue nice and flat is it helps to remove the paper cut templates and glue straight down to the foam core. To prepare these sheets for gluing, Nick has this very nice paper guillotine, and it was perfect for trimming off a bunch of papers all at the same time. These prints are going to be the skin of our terrain. I took the sheet, cut off the excess so it'll hang down over the sides, and then I applied a lot of glue, spreading it around with the disposable foam brush. Then I set down the paper and used my hands to smooth it out, working from the middle out to really crush it down into the glue and wrapping it around the edges like a Christmas present. It would be really funny to wrap someone's Christmas present like this. They would never get the paper off. Now for the walls. This wall texture is a 2.5 strip of hazard stripes, and I want this along the bottom edge. I trimmed off the white edge my printer left behind, lathered two sides with glue, and then laid down my sheet of paper texture, just like I did the top part of the box, squishing it into the foam, wrapping it around the sides, and then squeezing it flat. I ended up with a seam, but I was able to make it work, lining up the next sheet to match the pattern of the hazard stripes. After all the sides had been papered, it was a very attractive box. I'm very, very pleased with that. Our artist Liqerise did these designs, and I think it tidies up a box real nice. And it would take a lot longer to paint this than just to glue on some printer paper. And some stuff's gonna be a little bit trickier, like this shape, but Sean, why don't you knock out the other boxes?
Okay.
This was definitely a new experience, wallpapering the terrain instead of painting it, but it saved us a ton of time, and honestly, it worked out better than we could have done with painting. The brick texture is so nice and detailed, and the hazard stripes are deceptively difficult. The pattern has to be perfect or else it looks like orc hazard stripes. We are building 11 pretty big buildings. We were able to get them done in a couple of hours, and it hid any flaws in our foam cutting. On my fancy building, I had to do some more trimming to get the sheets to fit perfectly, measuring and cutting the sheets ahead of time to get them sized correctly and using lots and lots of glue. I was a little worried about the cheese lid, but I was able to tile the paper texture perfectly. Putting a little glue on the face of the pages helped to fully saturate the paper and make it into a pretty rugged skin. It's like paper mache. A couple of hours of this left a pretty thorough coating of glue all over my hands. Putting on the paper, easiest thing you ever did in your whole life?
I wouldn't say that specifically.
The trick is, don't be stingy on the glue. I used up an entire bottle, a brand spanking new bottle of Elmer's glue. 89 cents of Elmer's glue went into this project. But it's almost done because these are the shapes that are going to make up the terrain. The next bit is easy, it's just painting everything.
Yeah.
Heading to the garage, it's just early enough in the season that we can still spray paint. We blasted everything in a coat of black primer and then a dusting of gray to add a little color. Coming back inside, we dusted all the walls with the green-gray color. We're doing a military theme to these buildings, and we have 2 airbrushes. We stole Nick's this morning. Hitting these parts from above gave them a little bit of a zenithal and helps to pick out all the details. On the eagle parapets, these got a dusting of a dingy gold color, and we can move on to some paint brushing, with the biggest brushes I own.
Everything got a heavy dry brushing of olive green, and then a sponging of tan. And for the eagles, they got a dry brushing of bright gold. We did these same steps to everything, keeping the painting simple and letting the details of the 3D prints shine through. These decorations will be what makes the terrain feel alive. The only tricky bit of this painting was finding every single sandbag and sniping these out with the airbrush. I did this bit while Sean finished up base coating. And the barbed wire got a dry brushing of silver to highlight all the little points.
We've got a heck of a lot of paint on every single thing, and Sean just got a second wind.
If you can call it that. I need like a fourth wind at this point.
Yeah, you don't have a ton of experience with humongous painting sessions, although we're working on it.
I'm getting through it. So.
All right, we gotta start gluing these buildings together, and this humongous pile of stuff is gonna turn into like 8 things.
Yeah.
This is the moment I've been waiting for. This terrain set is all about cheating to get a lot of awesome out of a little bit of work. I super glued the parts on top of the paper and it really came to life. The trim, half walls, doors, big shiny eagle, it's all coming together. The biggest surprise was the Pringles cans. After all the parts were glued on, it's hard to believe that Mr. Pringles' mustachioed face is hiding under there. It just looks like a nice grim dark bunker. And on the big building from my brain, it was really fun to find all the parts that fit. I built it following the measurement rule so everything fits like a glove. If there was ever Warhammer Legos, it would be this. The parts with the most utility are these barbed wires. They come in short, long, and Pringles configuration. These will stop any would-be invaders from getting into the Imperial bastions.
It's about 10:20 and we started at 10:20, so like 12 hours, but we from zero, starting from zero and the 3D prints that Nick printed for us, starting from there, and then one Amazon presentation board, 2 family-sized Pringles, and 12 hours, and it's this. However, Sean has to get going. And you've been here for quite some time because we actually played in a tournament yesterday, a Spearhead tournament. And who won that Spearhead tournament?
It was me, and I got this sweet trophy from the store.
I also played in the tournament. I came in dead last.
You got dice.
I got dice. Nick was 4th. So you're gonna leave because you have to go to work tomorrow.
Yes.
Meanwhile, I'm already here at work.
Gonna be a long day.
All right, shoot. Get out of here.
What? Okay.
Now that all these parts are stuck on, I can see the little touches that the terrain is calling for. The sandbags needed a little dry brushing to bring out their details. After that, I threw on one of my all-time favorite paints, Antelope Brown Ink. This color is a super saturated yellow-brown, and I sprayed this over the paper and 3D prints, making some yucky piles on the floor and pulling my airbrush down in the front to make some rust drippies. This color is transparent, so it tints whatever it lands on, and it did a really good job of joining the painted parts to the flat paper. Then I hit all the submarine lights with red paint. I decided to do this after the pieces were glued on, so that the airbrush red could splash onto the buildings and help sell the object source lighting. I hit the light cages with the dry brushing of silver paint and then picked out the plasma pipe. One of our previous terrain packs was a whole set of pipes, and this piece joins the new terrain with the terrain we already have.
It's getting really, really close. This is one of the biggest, but one of the most doable terrain projects we've ever done. The airbrushing did a really good job of making the paper elements and the plastic elements kind of combine and look really, really good together. And we have another little trick, and that is gonna be some banners and posters. Our artist Liqerise designed some militaristic flags, banners, and some really funny recruitment posters. These are super saturated in color and very clean, and that's perfect because I can dirty them up to perfectly match my terrain color scheme. I started off with a patchy spray of Antelope Brown ink to add in some yuckiness, and then I turned the PSI of my airbrush to almost 0 and splatter painted this color over the pages. One trick I found was to let the airbrush spit out some paint drops and then smear them with my finger to make some streaking grime. To get a little green onto these pages, I sprayed some phthalo cyan green in patches. This is a blue-green color that makes the yellow look a lot more cold and desaturated. Now that I have my pages matching the grime of my buildings, I started to cut them out. For the posters, a little bit of tacky glue works perfectly for attaching them, and a trick I discovered was to crinkle the posters first and then unfurl them. This damages the printing and makes it look way more real. I put on as many posters as I could. In addition to posters, there are some banners. I cut 2 of these out at a time, leaving them connected in the middle so I could fold them over a metal bar. I took a length of 1mm brass rod and bent it over each side, then glued the banner over the middle of it, and then I used the handle of my paintbrush to press in some waves like the banner was flapping in the breeze. Then I stabbed this whole concoction into the side of a building. One last decoration was the flags. I prepped this in the same way as the banner, folding it around a long length of rod and then stabbing it into the top of my buildings, flying majestically. These paper parts were so much fun. I got to make lots of decisions and add some storytelling into the buildings, deciding just what each piece needed. It's all done, and it's so much. This is girthy terrain, and Sean is not here to witness this. Although, it took more than a day. It took a day and a morning. which is still pretty darn good. Oh, for an entire board full of terrain. This stuff reminds me so much of the old school terrain I used to see. Like when people would make terrain out of last night's TV dinner, like the plastic tray, it reminds me a lot of that. Each piece tells a little story, and that story didn't show up until we were in the middle of building it. You know, which one gets a little flag, which one gets a little light bulb. Ah, this is a lot, and I'm really, really excited to see what it looks like all together.
This terrain ended up being exactly what I wanted. Big, cool terrain that didn't take big, cool terrain time. The foam core building was fun, skinning it in paper was much more fun than painting 5 square feet of terrain by hand, and deciding what to do with all of these parts and where they should be added and all the little paper banners and posters. I can't wait to keep building with more of this terrain.
It's perfect. An absolutely militarized city. Ah, Sean's Guard are gonna look so good manning the battlements of this thing. And they're gonna look especially good to me because they're gonna be poking out the top. And so I get to shoot at them. Oh, this is really, really cool. This is the fall. Part 1, buildings. Part 1 of 3. Oh, we got more coming for the good old fashioned bastions covered in sandbags and lights and barbed wire and posters. Oh, the little posters, they're so cute. Ah, this stuff is really, really fun. And it's too bad that Sean had to leave because he has a job, because we could have played a game right now, but now I'm gonna have to wait until next weekend. Maybe in the meantime, Nick will print me some more parts because, oh, this stuff, according to the instructions, is really, really good. And then just messing around with it and turning it into buildings. Ah, this is pretty wizard. All of this terrain is available on our website for the month of December. If you subscribe to our website, you get a credit that you can spend on the brand new terrain or any previous pack we have ever made. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the fall? Buildings. Oh, I'm pretty jazzed.